Excellent. All right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, I don't have any announcements this evening. Is there anyone here for anything that's not currently on our agenda? Seeing as none, we'll move right into our first agenda item, which is appointment for Capital Improvement Committee, Dick Vanderberg, and possible votes. And we have Mr. Vanderberg here. Come on up.
Good evening.
Hi,
And are you volunteering for this of your own free will?
I am, yep. Whoa. I was not coerced or anything.
Since when is that a criteria?
I'm just checking, because...
I've already locked the door, so don't worry.
All right. So, being held hostage by Mike, you can tell
So
us.
I'm on finance now.
Yep.
And I know there's some openings on capital, and I'm able to attend afternoon meetings, and it interests me. And so I would be wearing my finance committee hat, but I'd also be on capital, so that's what I'd like to do, if that's okay with you guys.
I don't have any objection.
Well, I would tell you, Mr. Vanderberg is a neighbor of mine, and one day I was running, and he was riding his bike, and he commented on how well behaved my dog was. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of Mr. Vandenberg for the position of a Capital Improvement Committee. Do we know the term?
It's 3 years, I
I
believe.
think it's 3.
Yeah, 3 years. If we can like make it 10. then-
Right.
It's 3 years.
3 years, for a term of 3 years.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this?
Did you make the presentation to the library about the colonies?
13 colonies,
I
yeah.
wanted to see that. You going to do it again sometime?
So first Thursday of every month,
Yeah.
and next month is the run-up to the Revolution, so French and Indian War,
Oh,
that kind of stuff.
okay.
I think Hal's offering to be a guest speaker. He's got
No, I
firsthand
just want to
knowledge
be a
of some
listener,
of that.
guest listener. Okay.
All right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Mr.
You're
Vandenberg.
welcome, thank you.
Okay, good day.
Mike, we'll see you around, right?
Yes, you will.
All right. Second agenda item is a property use request for Soldiers Field, Omnis Films, 10/11 to 11/1. They'd like to use Soldiers Field, I believe, and possible votes. And we have a nice letter in our packet from Mr. Lund. Do we have him on Zoom, or, oh, he's here. Even better. Come on up.
Hi there.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, would you like me to just summarize this?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about it.
So, I am a filmmaker. I grew up in New England. I live in LA now, but I've written a film about rec league baseball. It's about a single game at the end of a season. The fictional scenario is that it's the last time that these players will use this beloved local field because it's going to be the site of a construction project. So it's kind of a funny, poignant film about community and baseball. We have Bill Lee, the famous Red Sox Hall of Famer, attached to the film. The request talks about shooting in October. I'm here to say, as of Friday, that's actually pushing back 1 year. We were able to secure some investors just the other day, just this past week, that warranted us, taking some time and doing it the right way and doing it next year. The reason I'm here is because I was back in New England, of course. I was scouting New England. Soldiers Field is the one that really stood out to me as kind of meeting all the criteria of what we were looking for, kind of an older, kind of old-fashioned field, old chip paint, wooden fences. It's perfect for what we were looking for. So now it's pushing back to next October. With that said, we're hoping to try to confirm it as soon as we can, and also, if so, be able to do a couple of actually test shoots and secure it for a few days this October, actually, just to start kind of wrapping our minds around it. And we would actually like to do a rehearsal on the field if we decide to move forward this month. So a little bit of a change in the dates, but that's the general request.
Will you be using the name of Douglas in the? I like it.
That's certainly possible. I mean, that's something that's definitely something we can negotiate for sure. In the script, it's the setting is my hometown of Nashua, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea of giving it local authenticity. So I'd be certainly open to making it a film set in Douglas and using the name Soldiers Field even.
You want a cameo in this, Tim?
I serve the public, not self-interest. I've spent the past 10, 15 years down at Soldiers, and I don't think you could have picked a better field for your film. Fast forward a year, are you still looking at just weekday shoots?
Yeah, no, it would be the same general schedule. We might try to push to 4 weeks with the new money we have, maybe try to make some more of a flexible schedule. Yeah, weekdays would still work for us, whatever would work for you guys. I heard there are weekend games
Right.
there in the fall, but otherwise the field would mostly be open. So yeah, it would still be kind of a weekday, Monday through Friday, sun up to sundown generally. And then the script does enter into the evening, and so there would be some shoots at night. Those shoots would preferably, generally the way we like to do it when we shoot a film is we do overnights so that we can set up the lights that we need to shoot an evening look and be able to shoot through the night and get as much out of that as possible. So there would be a few days in the production that would be overnight shoots, but generally it would be just during daylight, Monday through Friday. So
Okay. I think it's, like I said, I think it's great. We would just have to balance next year. This year's not a problem. That's why I thought it was so perfect. The field itself is only being used on the weekends. In previous years, the field had been used during the weekday. But with enough lead time, we can probably, or the people now in charge can probably work around that easy enough. And yeah, if you needed an extra, we'd probably squeeze into a baseball uniform still.
Do you do anything to ensure that anything will be put back the way it was? That was my only.
certainly, as the production would have insurance. We had a few minor requests about just some modifications to the field, which would be like, I know there's like a
What's that?
Webster Bank sign. We wouldn't want that because it's kind of a period piece. It's sort of set in the 90s. There was a,
I'm sorry, what would you do with that?
what was it?
What would you do? Would just cover it up?
Well, I thought it was a nylon sign. It might be able to just come down. I'm not sure exactly, but that was kind of the only thing I saw, and I thought that it doesn't quite fit the period of the film. So everything else we really like. So
Okay.
if there's some way in which to modify, cover it up, or remove it temporarily, we would.
That can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I think it's a good thing for the town, and could be worked into some economic development promotion about the town, too.
That was my thinking. I would hope it could. Yeah, I think it would be a nice feather in the cap of the town. Yeah, that's generally the premise. I mean, I understand there are houses right nearby, and we wouldn't be doing any pyrotechnics or no helicopters flying over the field, so wouldn't be making a whole bunch of noise. I mean, generally, I think, given that it's 2 baseball teams and a crew as well, there'd be anywhere from 30 to 50 people on set. But we'd be keeping it down and trying to be respectful of the neighbors as much as possible. And if we move forward, of course, we would talk to the neighbors as well directly and, just make them comfortable as much as we can.
Question, please. Awesome idea. I'm fully on board with this. The question that came to mind is you said that you would be going all through the night
Yes. So
to sunrise?
Yeah, yeah,
Because that would be a concern with the abutting neighbors, that would be the only,
with the, sorry?
the abutting neighbors, because
Yeah.
their house is close to it.
Of course, I figured that would be one sticking point. So, again, that would only
Maybe
be,
like it.
that would only be like 4 to 5 days towards the end of the shoot that we would do
Yeah.
overnight shoots. And we can sprinkle them in however we feel like
Yeah.
it would best suit the needs of the neighbors. And, but yeah, there would be, the general, like, I'd say 3/4 of the shoot is just during the day. And there's some scenes at night. So.
If we're not in your way, I assume the populace could watch the production taking place,
Certainly, yeah, yeah. As long as it's, not
not interfering.
interfering, but yeah, for sure.
So
Do it-
Kevin can't wear any outfits, right?
All right, I'm no longer for this.
Well, I'm sure this is a really interesting game, so there probably would be people in the stands.
Yeah, we've already cast certain people to play those roles. We wouldn't want to have too many people in the stands. It's kind of supposed to feel a bit empty and quiet. So, yeah, no, we wouldn't want to have anything that we couldn't control in the frame. But of course, if we could delegate an area for people to watch.
Yeah,
That was-
but to be clear, I'm not angling to get in this film. I'm thinking it'd be fun to have the Douglas people at the Douglas game.
Certainly, yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah.
Are you letting Bill Lee pick the teams?
No. He doesn't get, he's a wacko. But he will be in the film, and he'll probably be there for like 3 days on the shoot. So,
Do you have any awareness of the history of this field?
I've looked it up, yeah, yeah. I know it was used way back for MLB games. So, that was part of the interest, the historical field.
Yankees, Red Sox, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I move approval of the request to let the applicant use the field in October. Do you have the exact dates?
So now it's 2022.
20.
We had exact dates for this year. Like I said, as of Friday, that has now pushed. So it's certainly not as urgent now, but the sooner we can get some, you guys on board, the better. And like I said, we're kind of looking at 2 days this month that we could do a kind of a test shoot, as well as a rehearsal on the field with the cast that we have. And we're looking tentatively at October 8th, the Friday, and October 10th, the Sunday, for those uses.
That Sunday might be a problem unless it's after probably 2.
Okay, after 2?
Yeah, I think they have double headers every Sunday.
If it's after 2, that may be fine, actually, for us, so.
All right, so it'd be the 8th and the 10th this year, and then roughly the same dates?
Roughly
In
the same
2020.
dates, we might make it 4 weeks with the additional time and budget for allocated.
Say, what, 4 weeks in 22?
4 weeks in
October?
2022
Would
in
be all in
October. Pretty much all of October, might bleed into November. So, yeah.
Just be mindful of, we have a festival in town every October.
Oh, you do?
It's a one-day event.
First Saturday.
There's set up day of and breakdown, so there's
Okay.
several days.
Might
Yeah.
be good to work in for some local color, the Oktoberfest.
Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah.
All of Main Street shut down for that, so.
Yeah, second on it.
All right, so the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this?
I guess I would just ask who would be the point person that I could keep in touch with over the course of,
Probably, Matt.
Matt and Lisa.
okay. I'll get your contact information after, if that's cool. Okay, great.
Okay,
All in favor?
yeah. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're all set.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down. That's nice. Good luck to you.
This could be the start of a whole industry in town.
You know, you're getting old when people make movies about the stuff you did in your life,
Right.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And the people that come before you probably weren't even born then.
All right, so Next is to review and ratify appointment of Matthew Benoit as the Community Development Director. Come on up, Matthew.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, before Matthew sits down,
You may.
this appointment is a result of a long search, multiple postings in many different sources for this position, and it was only with the help of Eve Tapper, who's currently serving as the interim director, that we were able to network to some candidates and arrive with Matthew's application. We had hoped for a faster turnaround, but this is a critical role in the town and coordinates so many critically important processes for our citizens and for the people who want to do business with the community, that we have to have the right fit. And I'm very happy to tender this appointment for your review. From the date that you received notice of this appointment, you had 21 calendar days to decline. You may approve in the same period of time, but if the 21 days go by, it's automatically approved. But given Matthew's projected start date, in order to make sure all of the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed, I'm respectfully requesting your approval, an actual vote, so that we can set that aside and move on. So with that, Matthew comes to us from the town of Natick, where he works in the planning department there. And prior to that, he had private sector career, as well as serving for how many years as town planner in Auburn?
Approximately 4, but with dual roles
Yeah,
for others, so call it 6.
but a wide range of experience across issues, including energy and GIS mapping and technology that add to the portfolio, not just, this is not an academic planner. I think if we started off in this process saying we did not want an academic planner, we don't need a college professor, we need somebody who can roll the sleeves up and get the job done. So without further ado, Matthew Benoit, and we invite questions.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. It's nice meeting you all. Matthew Benoit, currently the Development Review Planner in Natick, as you mentioned. I've been doing planning since out of college. It's my passion, it's my field. Specialty subdivision control law, I understand that's a big occurrence here in the town of Douglas. So experience in master plans, list goes on. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I already asked him about it.
I'm very excited about this opportunity.
You made it through Mike asking you questions?
Somehow, yes.
No, I was
I'm good.
I only asked him to-
Only 3? You got him on a tired day.
The interview panel was very good, and they asked some
So
very
you
good
work
questions.
with Julie Jacobson in Auburn?
I did.
Yeah.
Julie is,
She's very good.
impressive.
Yeah.
Everything she does is an excellent resource, and learned an absolute ton from her. She's a very wonderful woman.
I really don't have any questions. With a recommendation from the committee and everything else, I feel pretty comfortable.
But through the interview process, he was asked a lot of questions by a lot of people, and what was impressive is he took the time to answer it. He didn't just give you an answer. He gave a good response. So, I personally think they'll be a good fit to the town.
Yeah.
Benefit.
So, definitely. So, and good, like, organizational skills, and that way we can try and get our planning board meetings to, like, single occurrences when people come in front of it, and,
Very big on process.
all right.
Does Six Sigma mean anything to you?
Yes, it does. Okay. We're good.
I'm a Six Sigma green belt, so process is just on my mind in all things. So
That's a lot of classwork.
You can explain what that is to me at some point.
It's,
Don't worry, Alan. They tell me.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Sounds
basically making you
impressive.
very proficient in, like, project management.
Okay.
it's applying
Managerial
mathematical.
skills and,
Yeah, it applies mathematical equations to standard processes, and what I was, well, it's called
Earning
process.
efficiencies and.
Yes, it's called process excellence as part of the course, so I see it in everyday life now, ever since getting that education, so it's unavoidable now.
So you could have just led with that whole Six Sigma thing.
I'm trying to think of whether that was a McKinsey product or an Anderson product. I think it was a McKinsey product,
Not sure.
but it was General Electric that.
No, I got that when I was working for the Hertz Corporation.
I
And
think it was GE though that made it, Jack Welch made it the standard.
Who am I to argue with Mr. Welch?
No kidding,
All
huh?
right, so I would make a motion that we ratify Matt's appointment of Matthew Benoit to the position of the Community Development Director and to welcome Matt into his new role.
Second.
Excellent. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 thank you kindly, gentlemen. I'm looking forward to
Welcome.
starting. Thank you so much.
When do you start?
Start date is October 14th.
Excellent.
10:14, cool.
Thank you
gonna
very
make
much.
Certified copy of that vote to go to the town clerk.
Is Nick's Ice Cream still over in Natick?
No, it's Park Street Ice Cream that we're talking about. That place is legendary.
Where they used to do the cruiser
Asked
nights?
about Casey's instead of the ice cream. place.
Casey's is the staple.
It's a hot dog place.
Yeah, it's been there since the 1800s.
What are you implying?
Thank you very much for your time.
It's gonna
Looking
get
forward to
ugly
working with you all. That's okay.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, you too. All right, so next up is the Personnel Board, concerns related to job descriptions and possible votes. Good evening.
Hello.
All right.
So what brings you to us today?
We have a
I
memo.
was wondering if you received the packet that I handed out?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
The Douglas Personnel Board is not receiving job descriptions. And I think it's missing basic call firefighter, on-call paramedic / EMT, probationary firefighter, captain firefighter, job description missing, supervision and accountability, facilities manager, Warrant added assistant fire chief to PS5 position, evaluation sheet as PS7. The new economic development project coordinator to MS4, rewrite administrative assistant and town engineer. Is that,
Right, correct.
all right.
Okay. So we're just concerned because we're not receiving them, and we wanted to do, if you go to page 4, we started a template for the job descriptions to make them all the same and uniform. So we wanted to start putting the information in the template so we would have a consistency throughout the departments. That template was in the back.
That's why I didn't find it.
Yeah. I'm like,
Okay. I can make a copy. You know where the copy machine is?
They can have mine.
You make your copies.
all right. I don't even know where to start.
I think one of our concerns is whether we should even continue. Dissolve or,
Well, that's like, the last page, if you look at, there's a list of our duties when when Mike became administrator, he set up the personal board responsibilities and things. And right now, it's because we're not sure what we were supposed to do, we'd like to have that looked at again, and maybe come up with another one with a later date.
So, Mr. Chairman, the date on this is 3/19/2012.
2012, yeah.
That's when I received it. There wasn't an
Yeah.
official date on
Yeah.
it, so I had to
The
date
only
it.
point I was trying to make to him was the first couple of sheets. The personnel bylaw approved May 6, 2019. trying to just recreate a new one that's...
Yeah, just
outdated?
trying to understand what our, like I said, it says here, the board shall make recommendations to the administrator regarding the written contents, the job description, et cetera. And we're not really able to do that because we're not receiving those. And we'd like to receive those, and the ones that we do have, we'd like to place them in the new template so that they're more organized and look more official. And the other issue we ran across was, under the powers of the administrator, someone added under, if you go to this page here, 4B.
Yeah, 4B. The town
okay.
administrator, subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen, is empowered and authorized by this bylaw to adopt personnel policies defining rights, benefits, and obligations of employees subject to this bylaw.
Right. But what I'm concerned with is the last sentence of I, which says the administrator need not consider any proposal already considered in the preceding 24 months. So what does that mean? Well, the thing is, Mike, this was
Well, it's,
under,
I'm going to try this and see how well I do on it. This falls under the strong town administrator,
Well-
which is what we have, kind of.
It wasn't somebody added that to the bylaw. Town meeting
Added it to the
amended
bylaw.
this bylaw to read the way it does now.
Okay.
The 24 months, there's a similar provision in the zoning code. There's a waiting period. Repetitive petitions for relief are not, you have to wait the timeline. You can bring it right back after 2 years, but we're just not going to keep resubmitting concepts. The template is actually what is being used to rewrite job descriptions. I think this select board, I'm going to say you've done 7, 8, or more new job descriptions, because I put them on your agenda. As I rewrite the job descriptions, I vet them with Labor Council, and then ask for your approval, and we have a folder on the server now that has all the job descriptions, and some that have not been updated for many years have been updated. We might not have gotten to call firefighters, for instance, yet, but we're going to. But in the meantime, my community development director, we just hired a guy. That was completely rewritten for the posting and approved by this board. So that's the process I've been using. So I've been using the template that's there, and with the aid of Labor Council, we're being a lot more specific about certain parts of that in terms of physical and other abilities in order to protect the town should an employee deteriorate while on the job and be unable to perform the essential duties of the job. You need to lay out the path for being able to take corrective action. So, originally here, my intention after these amendments were made to both the bylaw and the personnel policies of the town, because they were both amended at the same time, was to continue to use the advisory board as a resource. But I just haven't had the occasion to do that. We're, as you know, because I've updated you the last 2 meetings, we're in the process of trying to look at this entire compensation system and make sure it's competitive with neighboring communities, both in terms of job description and salary. And that's where we need help right now. The existing system, such as it is, was a well-thought-out, very detailed, and internally structured and mutually reinforcing set of principles that we may not keep. So at this point, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time fixing things in the existing system. It's kind of like putting windows in the highway barn, right? You might do it because it's broken, but you won't do it because eventually you won't spend thousands and thousands, because eventually the building's going to come down in the short term. And that's really kind of where we are right now. So I've interviewed more than half of the employees of the town in an attempt to get a better handle on whether they feel their job description is accurate and whether or not they feel that their compensation fairly reflects the level of responsibility of their duties. And that's going to be a report that I'll send out to everyone. The personnel system is really very important to the Town Administrator Act charges the administrator with being the personnel director for the town, who writes the policies and administers them. So we're making progress about as quickly as I think I can with all the other responsibilities that come with the post. At this point, I think some of the departments have begun a regular track record. I can certainly speak highly of both the fire department and the highway department of doing annual evaluations. And I'm catching up with department heads. The finance director has been here for close to 15 years, has only received one written review. The fire chief had never received a review since the time he was a lieutenant. We're catching up on things that were not done for a very long time. It's time consuming, right? So we sit down, I know with Chief Vincent, we sat down, we did a preliminary review, then we did some edits, then we put it into the contract discussion for renewal of his contract, and all of that is a really time-consuming project. And we're getting to each individual one as they come about. So the finance director's contract is up this year, that will be a focus. And working with the parts of the organization that are represented by collective bargaining units, we're making sure that we tie performance and add performance standards and tie it back to steps. But we are at this point kind of have a rickety system. I think we've discussed this in open session several times, and we need to fix it. We need to address it. So I'm happy to try to go over this roles and responsibilities of the board and try to engage the board again, but what I don't want to do is go to a lot of meetings and really focus on detailed nits of this and that. We've got a bigger project at hand, and that's where we need to engage people in a consensus building project. So I'm not entirely convinced that the board doesn't need to exist anymore, but I don't think it continues to do what it's been doing. It needs to refocus its efforts on a more general question and not worry so much about OA1 versus OA2 versus this title or that title. We have to match the title of the person and match that title and the person to the title in the compensation chart that town meeting votes. That, Gene, makes sure we always dot that I, cross that T. So that's kind of where we are with it. I don't know what else to say at this point.
So it's not necessarily, what we're looking to do is basically just kind of revamp what personnel board does for their roles and responsibilities, because it's not, to your point, you're putting windows in a broken building, continuing it the way it is.
Yeah. But it's advisory now. So there's, it went from being a board that did a lot of administration, but when the act was passed in 2012, it changed the roles of, the relative balance of these roles. And it's just very different now.
Well, the Town Administrator Act was passed before then. Right, that's what we're talking about. And
It
then
was 2012.
the strong TA?
It's not really it's a unique TA. It's unique to Douglas. It's the way that you wrote and what town meeting adopted here. And I don't know who wrote that, probably Brian Mazur. So if you want to look on a spectrum, the town manager being a very strong chief administrative officer and executive, some of the Western Mass executive assistant or executive administrator, which is make the trains run on time and not much else. The Douglas, it's more than halfway towards the town manager side in terms of the scope of authority. But there are still some things that are limited. Department head appointments. So tonight you had to ratify an appointment. In Uxbridge, for example, the town manager appoints, and that's pretty much it, except for public safety chiefs, et cetera, et cetera. We could wax on about that, but it took a long time from the time the act passed to the town meeting where the bylaw was actually updated to reflect the change that had been made. So that was more like 2018, 2019 timeframe where that conversation occurred.
Yeah. So here's my concern. We have 3 volunteers that have expressed interest in serving in the
Have
person.
served, probably, too.
What's that?
Have served as well.
Yeah, have served, a long
That
time
was the
served, and played a really intricate role in the running of the town for a while, and and there's a purpose there, but it doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut guidance as to what the purpose is at this point in time in the life of town government here. Is it something that we can work out, or do we want to be cognizant of your time and put things on hold a little bit until we can really give them a good scope of,
A charge, so to speak.
right.
I would say that this document needs to be overhauled and presented to the existing membership of the board to see if it's something they're interested in doing. Some of these might survive, some of them won't.
So I ask. All we ask is, please define our
Yeah,
role.
yeah.
You know,
That's-
it was this
it's
role
not an
here
unreasonable request at all.
After the
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
okay, fine, now it doesn't seem to be, and,
So it's sort of a drift. You still want to contribute if, value
right,
to
that's what I said,
Yeah,
once,
if
once.
it's useful.
Yeah.
If it's not useful,
well,
Right.
so that's
Why
what we're
waste
going
that
to do.
time?
We're going to go back and look at, see how we can best use your experience and your interest.
Yep.
Make sure it's out of whack right now, but I think the board should look at that and decide exactly what your role should be, discussing with you and with Matt.
Is,
So just put something on later.
yeah, we can put it on the later agenda, like,
Yeah.
we want to readdress it. I know we're trying to prep for fall town meeting. That's the biggest thing. Would it make sense to revisit this after town meeting's done?
Your next meeting is the 5th, would be too fast.
For Matt just to work through it.
Well, I want to be cognizant of their time as well.
No, I understand that, but
No, I
had
would-
an opportunity to.
I would say put it on the agenda for your first meeting in November.
Okay.
That will give us a chance to fully prep out town meeting, and I'll be away for a couple of weeks in October. So I can get the work done before I leave, come back, polish it up, put it on your agenda for in the meantime, send it around.
Does that make, so we'll readdress this first meeting?
rush.
We don't want you to be adrift.
Yeah,
Yeah, but, you know,
Can I say something?
Sure.
Ellie, she's on the,
I'm just curious whether, I'm Ellie Chesbro, whether we need a personnel bylaw anymore with the special act going through and that originally when the personnel bylaw was developed, which Betty Ankin, she's old and was on the original committee.
always a compliment.
It's with an E at the
And
end.
there was no town administrator. So, I mean, that whole, the town didn't have somebody helping orchestrate the whole thing. But I'm curious whether, you know, when we talk about all of this, that do we actually need a personnel bylaw? I know later on in your agenda, you're talking about vacation, because that is in the bylaw, vacation elements. I have no idea what you're going to talk about, but does it have to be there? Can it be put into the personnel policy and procedures manual, you know, and just get rid of the personnel bylaw? Or is there a state law that says we have to have one?
I have to disagree a little bit because I think having been a longtime employee, employees need that guarantee. When we first started, I was on the first personnel board back when we were in the old building on Main Street. There was no uniform bylaw. If the assessors wanted to give their secretary a week of vacation, she had been here for 20 years, she got a week. I came to work in the town clerk's office, and I got a week right away. Someone in the selectman's office got 3 weeks, and she had only worked there 2 years. There was nothing uniform. Everybody fought for every penny they got in raises. Some years it was 6 cents for our raises. That's why a bylaw was created, and I think it should stay.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I appreciate Ellie asking the question, but I agree with Ms. McCollum on the fact that the town administrator does not have say-so over certain employees of the town, but they still are employees of the town. So generally speaking, the government is the town meeting. So town meeting should have a bylaw that it votes and that sets the general parameters for anyone who doesn't have a contract, which is the vast majority of our employees. And that would extend to and include the day-to-day issues at the water department, library, and other places where the certain aspects of the school, but not many, that I don't have direct administration over. So you have to have a bylaw. There are things, I think there's some things in the bylaw that might go into the policies and things that are in the policies that probably should be in the bylaw. I don't know if I'm ready to tackle those two pieces of work again after so soon doing it in 2019, but certainly core benefits, vacation, sick, personal time, bereavement leave, the treatment of jury duty timeout, those things should be universally applied to everyone the same.
And I think those are a big draw to people that apply for jobs in
Yeah.
Douglas.
So it seems like you're leaning towards sort of the general policy things would be within their purview, but the directly appointing personnel that might not go through.
Yeah, where it helps to have other eyes and ears and opinions is around these general issues
Yeah.
of, are we competitive with other towns? So let's collect the data and have that conversation in front of camera in an open meeting. And parse it all out and really hear all the different perspectives of it before going to town meeting with a proposal. Job descriptions, I actually feel differently about. There are a lot of laws. Maya, our insurer, trains us all on these laws. Whether it's harassment, pay equity, workplace safety now that we're an OSHA state, all of these things that come into these, and ADA especially, come into these job descriptions. I write as best as I can, but I defer entirely to Labor Council to review everything and make sure it's proper not only to form but to content, and that we've thought everything through, and then it gets ratified, it gets voted in open session at the Board of Selectmen. Intervening boards there, that's just another meeting, and I think it becomes an inefficient process at that point, because we can all opine until the cows come home, but at the end, Labor Council is going to take out the red pen and strike out the things that belong or don't belong. So I think the town is adequately protected there. But when we're going through a process of determining, how are we going to be competitive for the next 2 to 20 years? Let's call it 2 to 10 years. When recruiting and retaining employees is going to be extremely difficult, we already know that. It's happening right now. It's only going to get worse. We need to have a plan. And I don't think that plan is for any one person to do. But I also think that means the duties of the board really are very different from what's currently outlined. And so I can't, I have a hard time engaging with the current system because it isn't what we need to really make things better.
So it sounds like what they're in front of us with is kind of twofold. To Ellie's point regarding the whole bylaw itself, which that's a discussion that we can do later. But I think what these ladies are mostly asking for is just tell us what our mission statement is so we know what we can go and do to help.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that we can, the first meeting, you said November, we'll put that on the schedule. We can have that set up for you.
Just so I know. I'm looking at the second. That's good. That's a good date.
Does that work for you guys? You ladies,
I'd
I'm
have to
sorry.
check. You're saying November 2nd?
November 2nd.
I won't be able to be here in person.
But we can, do you know how to remote in?
Yes,
All right.
I think I do. Remember, I'm old.
There was an E at the end of that,
No, I-
right, as Hal pointed out.
It's English.
I'm hoping I'll be available, just not in person.
If not, we can take it up again, but
Well, thank you for coming
Deadlines are-
before us, and I think we can clear this up and come up with something that you'll find interesting to work on and help the town with. It's up to date.
Good, I mean, we've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very
for
much.
bringing it to our attention.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good night, Ellie.
Okay, so now we're on to Planning Board, STM warrant articles, second review and possible votes. Selectman Fitzpatrick, did you have the opportunity to review these as you had
Absolutely.
wished?
As always, I did my homework.
Gold star for you.
First thing I just want to bring to your attention before we get too deep into it, so everybody's aware of it, the process in which to do this. So obviously, Les brought this forward as, whether he's a citizen at large or a member of the planning board. I believe you said the planning board, so as a point, you brought it to us, correct?
So the articles as a whole was reviewed by the planning board October, November of last year, just to refresh.
Oh, yeah, no, I get all that. No,
Okay.
I don't mean to be rude. I just, say, according to what I have here is from the Department of Housing and Community Development. So the process is to adopt a change of zoning bylaw or ordinance begins with the filing of a proposal with the Board of Selectmen. The proposal may be initiated by a Board of Selectmen, zoning board, individual who owns land or is affected by the proposal, planning board. So the submission, this is where I found this, and I just want to make sure everybody's aware of it before we get too far into it. Within 14 days of the receipt, the Board of Selectmen must submit the zoning proposal to the planning board for their review. The statute is silent as to the failure of either the Board of Selectmen or the City Council to submit the proposal to the planning board within the required 14-day period. You just need to be aware of that. I don't think it's a law. I think it's not mandatory.
Just
It's
practice.
a directory is what it is. So they can see that, they can see that. I just want to make sure everybody knew what that was before we went too far with it.
Well, yeah, I think that references as if a citizen brings something forward that they wish to have changed. I think that's what that mainly references.
No, it gave a whole list, so it would cover a
Well,
selectman, or a citizen, a board member, or anything like that to bring it forward. And I just wanted to make sure that I asked for the time to research it, so I did what I asked. So I researched that. The other thing that this is here is 11 pages of undevelopable lots in the town of Douglas. So it's more than a few lots that it would affect. And I don't know how much research you put into this to find out what the impact of these particular changes would be before we put it forward. And obviously, it's the planning board that's going to vote on it and do whatever they're going to do with it. But for us to do a recommendation, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the impact of what you're actually recommending. That's all.
So what you also mentioned at your last meeting is you wanted the in place of a planner, which was ratified and hired tonight, versus moving forward too quick on any articles that you felt not comfortable with and stuff like that.
Right.
So if we want to defer these other two articles to the new planner to review and bring these forward, then fine.
I myself, as an individual, you sat on an interview process as well as I did. He presents himself very well. He answered your questions, my questions, and everybody else's very clearly and very thought out. He comes with a very impressive resume and cover sheet. I think he'll do a good job for us, and it may be healthier for the town to just have somebody with his expertise look at it. So that's on those two articles. Did we vote on the meets and bounds?
Yeah, there are those two went forward.
Okay, so can I talk about those meets and bounds at all?
Sure.
So on the meets and bounds, just so we understand, I had checked to see what the, and I wish I did this before, just so I understood, because afterwards I had buyer's remorse. So not knowing how many subdivisions that are out there, how many were done, to just keep putting 25,000 or 12,500 into the budget is a little concerning. So then I reached out and I got a list of the subdivisions. So, and then I went over and seen Jean and asked her what we actually paid for, and is there any monies in the budget? So you have Shady Knolls Estates, which is numerous streets, but there's 72 bounds on the proposed list. I don't know how many actually were done. That was budgeted for $12,500. We spent $12,460.
Correct. 28 bounds were installed.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me finish for a minute, and then you can do whatever you want afterwards. So then the second one that because Jean is very adamant about earmarking where this money goes, she won't let us spend it unless it's very well defined. So Preservation Park is the second one. That on the list only has 10 bounds. That also has $12,500, which I understand hasn't been awarded a contract to somebody. And then we have a list of, let me go through this and then you can do whatever you want. I don't want to lose my train of thought. So we have a list of other projects, and I haven't had a chance to ask Matt this question. I think I might have mentioned it to Jean. We have a whole bunch of different subdivisions. I know I mentioned it to Jean because Jean said she only thinks in fiscal years. So, and I could be totally wrong on this, it's just something that I want to make sure we pay attention to. When I'm dealing in other things, I've asked the question, hey, can we just do the windows here and then next year do this? And that's called bid splitting. Does this fall under it, where we have an identified list of projects that could be done? Is that bid splitting, and would it be more advantageous to actually take that complete list, go out, get a proposal from a surveying company that could potentially be more cost-effective for us as a town? That's just my thought process.
So it's my understanding that the former director of the Community Development Office, when this surfaced, we took it in chunks to address one subdivision at a time to work through it. And Preservation Park, which is Conservation Drive, is its real name, the subdivision name is Preservation Park, has more than 10 bounds that are required for it. It is 20-something house lots. So, and it's long, everything's a 2-acre lot and stuff like that. So it's well more than 10. So the former community development director sent out the first proposal, which was raised before the planning board from a person who lived in the Shady Knolls Estates, which is Downs Road, that area there, so just so you're familiar with it. So that neighbor was trying to install a fence and ended up raising this issue, brought it before the planning board. What we're trying to do is install some of the bounds in these subdivisions that the bonds weren't significant enough, or the developer went out of business and things like that. We were never looking to do them all in one fell swoop of saying, let's go before the town and say we got to address all, whatever it is, 200 bounds. The former director of community office was going out, I think there was a number of 6 developments that he was going to verify whether there was bounds there or not. I haven't personally gone out to look for bounds in those areas. It's some initial work you got to go off and do, which is pulling the subdivision plan and then going off and doing some field work out there. And it's sometimes awkward walking on the edge of properties lines and stuff like that, or along the street to look for a bound that may or may not be there. So the planning board, trying to do the right thing for the community and for the citizens in these subdivisions who inherited this problem, with town accepted roads. These were town accepted roads, is trying to place in some bounds in there. What we proposed was already approved was the first 12,500, which went to Shady Knolls, Preservation Drive, Preservation Park, which is Conservation Drive. And that there, the money was allotted, already approved by the town meeting, and to send that work out to be bid. We got 28 bounds installed for the $12,400, which works out to be about $400 a bound, which is the surveying crew out there, them not just pinning, they're not pinning it, they're actually installing the concrete or granite posts and stuff, like doing it the right way. But it's a significant amount of work that's done. And our former community development director, he went with the lowest bid option. I think he got 4 bids at the time. and went with the lowest option to install these bounds. So I think everything procedurally was followed correctly on the bid process to make sure. Trying not to do it all in one fell swoop is because the amount of bounds that are needed to close out some of these subdivisions and stuff like that. What we're proposing with this allotment for the fall meeting is to do Colonial Estates and Spring Meadow Estates. That is Colonial Drive and Pond Street, and I believe might be Darling Way as well. So working with Jean, she wanted where are these going, where's the funds going to go for what projects, and since it's an allotment of that amount of money, those subdivisions are close and actually intertwined with one of the court streets and stuff like that. So that was the goal was to put some bounds in those areas. Do I think at the end of the day we'll be 100% done? No, because there's more to be installed because of these subdivisions going out. But I don't think, if the expectation is that we get every subdivision to 50%, maybe that's a stopping point. Where there's some bounds installed, where they can set up some controls and do some work off there in the field. So if someone's not installing the fence on the wrong thing or putting the pool too close to the property line, and then we're having more problems with, the building inspector going out there and saying, wait, I think you're too close to the property line, and that's the problem with not being a survey. So the bounds are there to survey people's property before they do a project, such as an addition or a garage or pool or anything like that. It's a problem that we inherited as a town because we didn't have the controls that we have in place now to secure the ability to make sure those bounds are installed prior to turning over the subdivision. One of the subdivisions that the former community director was going to check into, which was a couple subdivisions we just approved at town meeting to accept their roads, and I think some of them had bond money, but we may realize that the monuments weren't installed, which is just fabu on us because we would have preferred the bounds to be installed and use that money that was in those sureties in the bond to install those before we accepted those. So that's where we stand. At the end of the day, it's trying to do right by the people that live in the subdivisions. It's trying to stop us from, stepping in a situation that's not going to be well for the town or the residents and stuff like that. So if this board says, hey, you know what, get us to 50% in some of these subdivisions, if that's the goal, then that's what we can chisel away at. We're trying to verify which ones do have the monuments and which ones don't. Not everybody lives in a subdivision, I get that, but the people that do pay taxes just like everybody else, and the people that don't live in the subdivisions realize, hey, I'd like to know where my property is. I can understand someone that would like to know theirs as well, property line. So that's where that article has come from. It's literally a situation where the planning board's trying to do the right thing of the lessons of the past and trying to rectify that. That's it. It goes out to a bid process, and we're not trying to get them all done in one fell swoop because I think the financial impact would be too much. So we're chiseling away at it, and if this board desires, a stopping point of whatever percent, then, that can go back to the planning board, and the planning board can decide if that's, meets their expectation or doesn't. At the end of the day, it's just trying to do what's right for the citizens, and being able to provide, what every property doesn't get 4 corners staked out in the pin.
I would hope not.
No.
We shouldn't.
So we're clear. So a bound usually goes in between, Hal might know it, but bounds usually go between, 2 to 3 or 4 houses away, so they can set up control. That's what it is for survey.
Right, so the question came up, if you don't mind.
I don't actually, I have to, I got something going on at my house right now that I got to go attend to, so
Okay.
I'm going to turn this over to our very capable vice chairman and
Right.
the other selectmen.
Chairman, acting chairman, you mind if I continue?
No, please do.
So, and then just for clarity, just so you understand where I'm coming from, and I believe and hope that we're all here for the citizens of the town. So with that being said, the question came in, Shady Knolls Estate has like 5 streets listed. Okay, I don't know how many houses are up there, but you just said that there was 28 bounds that was put into that.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The list that was provided from the former community director had what the initial subdivision plan showed, how many bounds to be installed.
Yep. What you installed.
No, that was the number that was supposed to be installed.
Okay.
Let's call it 80. It's supposed to be 80 installed. So we found out that there was none installed. So we went out for the bid process, and the contractor went in and installed 28 after winning the bid from being the lowest bidder and the lowest provider.
Yeah, actually, there was 72 on the list.
72 for that project.
72 on the list.
So-
Now, I'm
so-
starting to think about it.
Yeah, I don't have the list in front of me
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so 28 were installed for that particular project.
Right.
Again, it helps the land surveyors and helps the property owners to be able to,
No, I get all that, but typically you would have, what I'm used to anyways, you would put a couple control joint points in a subdivision. You wouldn't necessarily do a whole bunch of them because that's just an impact to the town.
Yep.
So if we put 28 into 5 streets, you just said that we would be putting about 20 into 1 street. Conservation Drive is one street.
Conservation Drive is one road. It's
Yeah.
got 26 houses, but it's the 8 where it turns. I don't have the exact
No.
number of how many
Just-
bounds are required for that
Yep.
subdivision
Yep.
in front of me, but they were on the list,
Yep.
and we are not looking to install more bounds
Yep.
than what's needed there. I also know Preservation Park has no starting control point, so you actually have to start outside the subdivision
Right.
and find a starting point probably down the street. You need 3 points to establish, okay? So you need 3 points to establish first,
right.
and then you're gonna move up to your point, and then you're gonna be able to shoot your other 3 points to try to establish where the other marker is
Right.
and build it out from there. So again, talking to the person who won the initial bid and stuff like that from the previous project, so I can understand how many bounds they installed, and mentioning about, hey, we've got Preservation Park, it's gonna have to look there, da-da-da. He's like, oh, I think we discussed that with the previous director,
Yeah.
and said that there's no control point, so it's not going to be as easy to start off where there was a starting point in Shady Knolls.
Right.
So again, we don't know what the other subdivisions have until they're out there, but they're trying to set up to do as many bounds to accomplish it. So if the task is to chisel away at these bounds and get some established in these subdivisions where there's no bounds whatsoever, that's going to only benefit the community. You think about it. If you've got I think Conservation Drive, I would say roughly it's about 2,200 square feet long from end to end. And if you've got no boundary markers and no boundary lines, it's a crapshoot out there to figure out where your property ends and starts or what. I mean, think about it.
Does this just get quoted out, or does this get time and material? Do we just,
I'm not-
you're on the planning board, and you have at least the
Yep.
luxury of that one that went through.
Yep.
So are we just saying go out and figure out how many bounds we need, and then they come back and give us a bill, or?
What
could
I
they-
believe the former director, I don't have the stamped in proposal, what was, the bids that were
Yeah.
put together.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the board asked him to go with the lowest bound, who can install the most bounds for the lowest price, and that would be the criteria. Not, time and material, it's you still have to install a bound. So it was the lowest cost. I want to say that, recalling what the winning bid said, mentioned about $400 per bound is what they charge. I believe that the other estimates were in $600 and $700 from the other people who quoted.
On these two subdivision, we already did Preservation Park, so it doesn't really matter.
No,
It's
we
kind of a mute subject. I mean, as far as appropriating the money, okay?
Yep.
So on these other two that you're proposing, do we have an idea of how many bounds we're going to put in if we went on the assumption of $400 a bound, or are we just guessing at the,
So it's
I'm just uncomfortable just
Yeah.
putting $12,500 on
Okay.
everything without knowing.
No. I think, so in that subdivision is about 56 bounds. There is controls that are at the street level because of where North Street is.
Yeah,
I don't know what's in the subdivision itself,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, because I haven't gone through and started looking for markers and
Right.
bounds.
Yeah.
And I'm just a private citizen, and,
No,
I can see them sometimes, and sometimes you can't see them because they're low, below grade.
Right.
So I would hope that it would be at least 50 bounds that would be installed in this allotment here, addressing two subdivisions that abut each other and have a common point of connection.
50 bounds between the two?
No, combined.
Combined.
Both of these subdivisions, one's a U shape, and then the
Yeah.
other one's kind of like a P shape, and the U and the P touch each other. It's like the upside down U touches the P type of thing. That's
And just
Pond Street
out of
connected to-
curiosity, are you going to come back next fall and try to do it again, or are you going to be back in the spring to do it again? And the reason why I'm asking, I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this before you tell me the answer, is if you end up with $2,000 left in this one, $3,000 left in that one, $4,000 left in this one, Jean can't close it out until after she does whatever she does in that office.
Yeah.
So we end up with all this excess money that could potentially pay for another
Yeah.
subdivision.
We would work with, again, what the planning board desires, and work with Jean to coordinate it as best efforts to
Yeah.
make it easier on her books. We, again, stumbled related to preservation in the park, because we thought that went out the bid and was
Yeah.
awarded, finding out that it kind of got stalled out of the process. So I get that the allotment of money has been set aside, which we'll use towards that project to wrap that up. I think that the best thing to do with this, Mike, is to have a discussion with the planning board in a future meeting by the end of the year, and say, where do we want to be at a percent of complete of, maybe we only can do 50% of the bounds that were in the plan.
Right.
At least set up something.
Yeah.
I don't, for the benefit of the community as well as the taxpayer, I don't think it's beneficial, in my belief, my personal belief, is to be at 100%. Maybe it's a certain percentage, but I'm only one person, and
And I agree with you on that. I think there should be some control points in there, so then they could pull their surveys off of that. I think it falls on the responsibility of the property owner. And you really can't give a clear assessment only doing one particular project, but I would think that you would do some sort of assessment, so then next time you come to town meeting or wherever, you have something a little better than just keep throwing 12.5 at it. I don't know where the number came from, and I'm just uncomfortable when you have a variety of the size of the developments, that's all I'm saying.
yeah, I think
And I'll
the
be
key
done
is,
after that.
I think the key is figuring out what the percentage of completion needs to be for the bounds that were put in there versus the ones that have no bounds whatsoever. And looking at that, at some point where we can wrap this up in the near future. Some bounds are better than no bounds and stuff like that, and I think that's the point where we kind of need to deal with it and go forward from there. I think if we have that discussion with the winner of the preservation part, we can have that discussion and say, listen, do every other, and let's just get through, let's get 50% of those done, as well as these next two projects. I think that's being more realistic and not going for full 100%. So I'm not looking for the 100% completion on everything. All right, because I'm a taxpayer, but I'm trying to find a balance of providing some, help for the citizens that are in those subdivisions, as well as what we're trying to do right here. So I wish we had the lessons learned of knowing before we close out and sign and accept roadways and public ways to confirm that the bounds were installed. So I was kind of surprised to see one of the subdivisions, I think, which just passed, that still had bond, but we find out that it might be on the list of not having those monuments. So that's kind of a little concerning, that we missed one again, type of deal, as a whole.
So going forward, the bond that the developer should cover the cost of these.
Yeah, the best cases that I've seen with some of the developments in a lot of the other communities as well, is as they get in a few houses and stuff like that, they start installing them as they go. You know what I mean? Because the surveyor's there and he's trying to shoot the other ones. I'm really disappointed, and I know, that some of the past developers in this community and the work that they've done in some areas, not having controls and stuff like that is very concerning of how things were established, that, and how septic systems are installed and things like that, and other issues that arise. But, at the end of the day, we've got the things in place now, and we're going to be always looking and checking on that. You know what I mean? And I think even as we accept roads, and we know that there's bonds out there with roads that maybe we haven't accepted, not very many, but we would be able to secure that going forward.
So, Mike, is it your opinion that with a certain bound, each development is, you probably take it on a case-by-case basis, but if there's a couple good points of reference, then that's enough for the
Well, if you
neighborhoods.
have control points, because without control points, it becomes a major problem. I did a particular project that they had to go right the hell down the street, and it just cost me a ton of money to have them do that. So I fully agree with what Les is proposing. However, I don't think we should be doing every other house. I think that's a little overboard, and it's costing us a lot of money. But if there's a control point, even as far as the, what's that little hall down the street?
Yeah,
But if there's a control point at that little triangle intersection that me and Hal put our signs on,
That's why
at least you can grab that to survey those buildings, so you
Yeah.
have a nearby control point, so it's not out of control.
Yeah.
One question that came to mind while he was speaking, does the selectman have any input into the acceptance of the road?
Sure.
The authority.
Well,
you.
no, I'm, yeah, you gotta humor me, because I'm only been on here for a little bit, so I have to make sure that I.
we're highway commissioner too, is that
This,
right?
Moving forward, this should be something of a topic
Yes.
when we're approving roads, to bring that up. It's gonna be up to these guys to make sure that there's some protection in place to make sure that that can be achieved, because then we're gonna be in a pickle if there isn't. We don't accept it, but then there's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, speaking on that, I think the town would have approved like 4 or 5 roads. And I think, some of those roads, there was nothing in the bonds and stuff like that, and they were funked. So we accepted them based upon the Chapter 90 money to be able to pay and do more road work, increase our Chapter 90 money.
Yep.
But that one subdivision, hearing that it might be on the list and not having the bounds was a little concerning that we missed it. Maybe you guys missed it as well.
Yeah.
Again, a bunch of us missed it, not just one. So we try to avoid that, definitely moving forward. It's lessons learned,
To your point about, you asking me that question, and then it reminded me of what Les said during his statement, is what this board wants them to do, whether it's 100%, 50%, or whatever. So it may be a task that possibly the town administrator could charge a new community development director with, to look into after he gets his feet settled as to what would be needed out there.
Yeah, and a lot of the bounds, you don't need to install every bound every 3 or 4 driveways or like that. To Mike's point, it's a line of sight to be able to get out there with the survey gun and everything like that and survey things. So you can survey 300 feet, 400 feet, and then set bounds from there. So the good thing is I think in this next bid process that we're doing for preservation as well as this next project, we can kind of state that to say, okay, you won the bid, come before the planning board, so we can come up with a game plan of this is what we'd like you to address, and maybe bring in the subdivision plan so we can circle which ones to do and go from there. That way it's control points that will do everything it needs to do, but we don't need to do everything.
We shouldn't be marking off people's properties as just over the top.
No, but we should be addressing a clear need, right?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
there's definitely a need for it, control points within the subdivision, absolutely.
Yeah.
But to identify all the properties.
Yeah, like, we can't be all things to all people on this, but we can try and do them a solid, and maybe Mr. Benoit there can
It
be
would seem to be a
helpful
good
here.
task for him to come up with a procedure as to how often to do it, how many houses, and
Yeah, I think working with him with the list and stuff like that, I think that we've got the list and verifying some things. You know what I mean? So
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
a few notes. First of all, Matthew and I have had a conversation, and I think we're going to have the driving principle behind some of his reorganization efforts are going to be centered around the fact that extra attention has to be paid to every single thing in a subdivision plan that will affect the lives of the community or the people who live in that subdivision in the future. So never again should we set surety that doesn't include all the costs, including the bonds. And if you're getting to the end of the project and the surety won't be sufficient to complete the things that are mandatory, then you've got to increase the surety and take whatever steps you need to protect the town's interests and those residents' interests going forward. The critical fact that's coming out in this conversation is there doesn't seem to be a clear scope of work. That, I'm sure Matthew could tackle that, but I'm not a big fan of necessarily of going to town meeting and saying, we're going to do the bounds on such and such a subdivision. No, get the money, ask for the money to do bounds in targeted subdivisions and leave it vague. But when you actually hire the person, you do a very specific scope of work. You're going to follow the following 8 bounds, and these are the control points, and these subdivisions. Just for point of reference, there's been a lot of conversation about bidding. It's okay to bid anything. Core principle, take the lowest, right? Not with design work. With design work, you take the best qualified firm, and you try to keep their costs within bounds. A municipality hiring for engineering services does not have to competitively bid. It's an exemption from Chapter 30B. So you can have an engineer of record that you work with in perpetuity to establish the bounds. If you are satisfied with the work and they do their work in a timely fashion, you don't need to bid that. Because it's not, doesn't need to be bid, there is no quote-unquote bid splitting. Bid splitting is a very specific thing. It's a form of behavior where you break things up so you can avoid certain things. Avoid advertising, avoid this, that. And, we'll do 2 windows now and 2 windows next year because we don't want to have to, we don't want to take the lowest bidder because we know who that'll be and we don't want it to be that person, et cetera, et cetera. It's goofing around with the procurement process. But when you have something like this that's very project-specific, each individual project has enough uniqueness to it where it's not splitting to do that. Just wanted to clarify those points about 30B. Architects, engineers, and related professions, municipal contracts with them are exempt from Chapter 30B.
So if I'm hearing it, we'll move forward with the 25 or 12 on the warrant, with the idea that money's earmarked there, but we're going to be hyper-focused on being really smart with how we're setting those bounds in the ground. That
Yes.
makes sense to me.
That money should not be spent until a contract is signed with the scope of work that's acceptable to the planning board and to the
Mike?
staff.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mike Zwicker, 46 Oak Street. On some of that matter, if I'm not mistaken, Bill has all the prints. They're in the office. There was a specific list, unfortunately, we don't,
I don't have it with me tonight.
right, it's laid out to the T, what's supposed to be done, and how it's supposed to be done. What we had originally planned on doing this, the way it went down was, get into development. It's cheaper to have the contractor there once in one development. So go as far as they could, or whatever, with the funds. If all the funds weren't used, don't go start another development to put in 2 markers. Wait to get some more funds to put in 10, 15, 20 markers to get more bang for the buck. Where exactly we are right now, I can't say. Unfortunately, Bill's been gone for a while. But the list was very specific, and I think the prints even show where they're all supposed to go on all these projects. And the main reason that they weren't done is, well, Les was saying, they said, see ya, they left town. So we're stuck with it. Over the years Bill was here, the language now is, if I'm not mistaken, in every one of the deals that's done on a development, it's in there for this, for your final print. To have all of the bounds before it even comes before you, the selectmen, for approval. But back in the day, it didn't always get done. And a lot of these are from the 70s, maybe even older, and from jobs that people just walked away from. But I know there's a list, a specific list of every single marker that needs to get put in, because we hammered on it for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 meetings before we even started, or even thought of coming to the town and starting to ask for money. And we came up with a reasonable number. We didn't want to go asking for 50, 60, 70, $150,000. It's not going to happen. So we, along with Bill, all agreed around 12.5 was a good number to start with, to get things slowly rolling and start to get some of these markers into all these communities. But we're trying to stay, like I said, in one area at one time to get more for the dollar.
Sure. We do have a full agenda.
One more question, and
Okay.
I'll leave them alone.
Sure.
He just talked about not going into another development to do 2 markets. You talked about just having a general fund, for lack of a better description. On the town meeting, it was specifically said Shady Knolls Estates, and then it says Preservation Park. We don't need to do that. We could just have it for the bounds, meets and bounds.
But as Mike points out, that could be problematic. What you really need is a solid cost estimate for each one of these things.
Okay.
And let's figure $400 a bound to give us a rough sense of what to ask town meeting for. That way, it keeps it nice and clean. The alternative would be to have an annual, just a regular running budget for it, and have the planning department and the planning board figure out how to spend it best. But it's better, much better, to have them just start and finish and move on to the next thing. And that's going to vary. It's going to vary a lot. Number of houses, number of turns in the road, et cetera. So,
What happens right now if somebody wants to sell and they don't have them in?
you got to go out and measure if you want to.
Measure it, well,
Yeah.
what would they do, Les? You know what they would do. They come out, they have, actually, they have instruments, they have GPS. They can come out, they don't need a bound to actually find it. If some of the more advanced surveying companies actually have GPS coordinates. That's how they'll go out in the middle of 30 acres and know where they're at. They don't.
So does that eliminate the need? Does the technology?
The banks require like a tape survey, which is a rough estimate, nothing that's going to hold any water. It's a tape survey. That's what most banks would require, showing where the house is located roughly, really in a lot, and nothing that would guarantee that that's exactly where the house is in any way.
No, but if you go in the middle of the woods and you do a deep hole test, they use GPS instruments and they know exactly where they are. They don't.
But that won't work for
Well,
lenders?
it could work, but I think in the long run, you're much better off having bounds, some control points within that subdivision.
Yeah, anyway, I like, Matt suggested something, and I think we'll have the benefit of working with the newly hired person coming in to be the community director there, to be able to sit down and show them, okay, this is the next subdivision we're going to address. Let's look at the bounds roughly. Let's take a physical viewing of it and drive up there to see what could be established, and then identifying and say, okay, for this project, it's going to be 20 bounds out of the 30 bounds that are on the plan to be installed, to go out the bid, and then the ask would be put down to be that way. And then addresses and closes out that project. So that would be probably the ideal situation moving forward. When we have that, with that person aboard, when we have those discussions, I think that would be what we would seek to do. So, okay.
Good.
You guys need me for another half hour?
Move on.
We good?
Yeah, no, that's plenty of discussion. We'll have probably another bite at that apple, but thank you, Les.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Moving on, we will move to the fire chief, who wants to talk to us about a standing order request for road races that come through our town fairly often.
Yeah, as you've seen this year, it seems like maybe it was COVID, but there's a lot more races and requests to use the town's property, whether it be the roads or the state forest or whatever. And I'd like to maybe get a little bit better coordination with DCR. Sometimes we have things that go on there, we're totally unaware of it. What it presents is a problem when we get an emergency call for something that has to do with a race. Not long ago, we had a person in one of the bike races that came through town who got severely injured, and we ended up taking our ambulance away for quite a while for a race, which really presents the problem of leaving our town uncovered for the citizens who are paying. So what I'd like to do is set some type of a minimum standard or a standard operating, a standing order that if it's a public safety problem enough to have a police detail, then we should probably have an ambulance if it has to do with a race or some type of an athletic event. So I've got a race that's coming up this weekend. We talked to them and said, hey, we'd like an ambulance detail. Well, unless the selectmen really request it or require it, then we'd rather not, because we don't have the money. So my personal opinion is, then don't have a race if you can't, fundraise, if you can't have the issue.
What other towns do? Do they?
They have details, and they talked about details with other towns, and, the police detail, they had, I don't know, 2 or 3 police in town for this one coming up this weekend, so I thought I'd come before you gentlemen and see if I could get some sort of a standing order that if we have a police detail, we have a couple of police details, that's a public safety issue, that's why they're there, then really we need to backfill that and have who's ever requesting pay for a detail so that we can not be left with a, lack of resources, a lack of personnel in town if we get a call. Because usually they're out in the forest. Now you have another issue. We've got to go retrieve them and find them, maybe take them out with an ATV to get into an ambulance, because we're not going down roads with our ambulance, fire trails and stuff like that. But it presents a problem, and I think we need to be proactive rather than reactive.
Matt, could we use any of the DCR gate fees to help cover this? Because I am cognizant of the nonprofit nature of some of these events, and if we could use some of those monies.
That's actually one of the reasons why the fund was set up.
Yeah.
Public safety matters arising from the operation of the park. It's not just the beach, it includes use of the trails.
I don't use that for people coming through just the roads in town and not going through the state forest. Probably,
Yeah.
could use that too.
Yeah, I mean,
The state has to sign off on it, but they're not really going to argue with us
Yeah.
if it's a public safety.
Well, if it's the money sitting there, right, so,
And we're not talking a ton of money.
no.
no, you're not talking, for a detail for 4 hours for an ambulance would be $400.
Right.
So,
I see Gene looking.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say that.
What do you think,
I'd like
Gene?
her input into
Yeah.
it as to, do we have to get pre-approval to get reimbursed like we did with the turnout gear and the drone? Or will we get reimbursed after
We
we?
used a lot of the state gate fees for those 2 items. We were letting it build up so we could buy capital purchases, and you wanted to use it for off-duty?
it would be a detail, but
The
Secondary.
details paid for by the
it's paid for by
by
the organization.
event, so we wouldn't be charging DCR for that.
Well, Tim's proposal was because they were a nonprofit to offset their costs,
If-
correct?
Gene doesn't like that idea. It was just off the cuff. I'm fine with not going that route and
I'm not
having,
saying I don't
You
like
gave up
it.
Be some other.
yeah, I don't,
fund
you can pick
somewhere.
your battles.
Yeah. Is it,
Fine.
just a question, is it an all-day event?
This one, no, it's, I think, 4 hours.
4 hours, and you must have a typical detail fee
Yeah.
in lieu of what,
You said 400, I think.
what Tim was trying to get to. Is there a way that we could help them out with a reduced cost to cover our costs? I'm just throwing it out there that it might be a compromise from what Tim was proposing, and Gene's not
Detail
twitching
rates
as
are
much.
typically set by the contract.
Yeah, that's set by the contract.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so it's,
So that answers that question.
And usually,
The answer's no.
usually the way it works is, it's a minimum of 4 hours. If you go over 4, it's now 8 hours. So I don't know with the police details, I don't know if they have 3 police officers on, or they're just assuming it's going to be over 4 hours, so it automatically goes to 8. I'm not really sure. I just want to make sure that we have coverage.
No, it's a
We have-
legitimate concern, and it's the cost of doing business.
I mean, I look at what it's like,
If there was
just trying to
something
pull
we
into
could help.
Dunkin' Donuts on a Saturday morning in front of the fire station.
Well,
It's
now
pretty
there's only
easy,
one
if
person
you have a
there.
bike race coming through, it can be pretty easy to have some type of an incident.
right, and I would like to be prepared for that. So,
The department always has the option of just staffing for the day and not charging the detail. It's how you would help them, but that's not usually how it goes.
Now it's on you. Your turn. I'll lead us through.
I look at it this way, is if that's what the police do, that's what I'll do, but
Yeah. What is the police doing? Any idea, man?
I have a different question, because I'm trying to think of a way to find funding for a nonprofit. So I didn't think it was too bad of an idea, but does the police department charge for the cruiser as well as the staff?
I don't know if they charge for the
Gene?
cruiser.
Only if the cruise is requested, I believe. So there are some that are charged for a cruiser rate, I think it's 25, but not every detail is charged for a cruiser.
What I'm getting at is an ambulance is an expensive piece of equipment if it's tied up. What are two paramedics sitting on a rock going to do? They're not doing anything if they're not in an ambulance. Is there a FEMA rate for an ambulance?
You know, there might be, I'm not really sure.
I think that we should be charging them more like $1,500, $400 for the people and $1,100 for tying up our ambulance for a whole
400 is
day.
a good deal for having two paramedics.
It's crazy. It's crazy, but you're also tying up a $250,000 piece of equipment for a whole day.
Well, to Gene's suggestion, do you need the ambulance sitting there on site or at the fire station as long as you have the staff there to dispatch?
It would really depend on the event where you would keep them, really. Like,
Just
there's
as the
one coming
immediate
up,
one coming up as well.
that 100-mile race, Tim, they'd be at the finish line, because it ends up, that's where people, you know, they push themselves and collapse at the finish line, you know. I know.
And where's the finish line?
Wallem Lake
Wallem
State
Lake.
Park.
So that's not that far from me, from the fire station is what I'm getting at.
I'd rather have them down
Okay.
there.
No, just asking.
Because you're gonna do little medical care, things like that. Here's an ice pack, you know, things like that, where people don't need to be transported, but you're helping them, making
Right,
them more.
well, it might be a case by case, because you're right, that's 100 miles and it's the end of the thing, and you damn it, you only got to run really fast for 2 more miles and you make it there and then your heart explodes. I get that, but there's other ones where it's not as robust.
And that's why what I'm saying is, the trigger point is, if you have a police detail, there's obviously a public safety. So, you know, we're gonna look at it and say, well, I'll talk to Chief Miglianico, you having a detail?
Yeah, there's no argument there, I was just trying to come up with a creative way to help them, that's all.
No, I totally get it. I totally get it.
The horse events and bike events are the dangerous ones. Just when people get hurt, they get really hurt. So that injury was, the rider went over the handlebars and really got clanked. So that took us out of commission for the whole day. And time is really, really important when somebody's injured that critically. So even if they only save 3 minutes by being closer to the event, it could be a really important 3 minutes for the person who gets hurt.
And like I said, I've got to get with DCR to have it work better with them as far as, hey, you got to let us know when you have these events. 'Cause you remember the horse event, the horse that fell. I had no idea there was 50 trailers of horses up there, and one horse went off on a wrong bridge and slipped and ended up putting it down.
Upside down in the mud.
Yeah, no, we had asked them to be better at that. I don't know, what's the will of the board? What do you want to do here?
Well, I make a motion to support the chief in his request.
Second.
All right. The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
3 yes, 0 no. Thank you, Chief. Matt, number 7, we're going to move along.
If the parties don't mind, I'm going to try to summarize this so we can move the meeting along. Is that all right? And if I say something wrong, then jump in. But, well, you can, but I just really want to cut to the chase of it.
Maybe you can speed it up here.
Yeah, so we've got, a lot on the edge of a subdivision. The house is a little bit kitty corner versus the bounds. On one side, it's the same owner, so they can make an adjustment. But on the other side, it's town land. And if we pivot the property line, it'll come into zoning compliance, in a nutshell. So what we're asking, because it's an interest in real property and you're moving a line, it triggers a requirement to go to town meeting. Hopefully, this would take 20 seconds at town meeting, because it's a really simple fix for this property owner, but they're trying to sell, right? Or you have sold or are negotiating the sale. So,
I do think you should look at what you're proposing.
if you want to, but
No, at least you'll have it.
We'll move this on along, Matt. You're good.
You're good, we don't, yeah.
Thank you.
but we have a copy, as long as we have a copy of the map, we can publish
Oh,
it.
no, I wasn't talking, sorry, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking in general about the quickness of our meeting.
Okay.
There on,
Oh.
so,
Yeah.
please, yeah.
Hey,
Once
he
you said you're
confused me
good,
too.
Yeah.
Once you said you're good, I'm running out of here.
Everybody else started getting up.
We have plans in our,
He stayed here till 8:30 and felt like he wanted to show us his plans.
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna look at them.
There's two buildings. What it really amounts to is you can look at this tax page.
So the first one is what's existing, and this is what we're looking to do?
Yeah, it basically calculates it out. It's a land swap of, we're giving you roughly 2,100 feet, and we're taking 2,000 feet. It's a reconfiguration.
What am I looking at?
we're just voting on moving it to the town meeting,
This is
right?
going to go.
Move it to the town meeting and
It's a swap.
hopefully endorse
And
it.
there's,
Pretty.
right.
We tried to go the variance route, they suggested that would not work, so I feel okay, that's.
And there's any butters in the in the audience? Yes, sir?
We're not abutters, we're under contract on the house.
Okay. And you're in support?
Anything that'll get me into the house.
Good.
Okay,
Okay,
we aim to please.
yeah.
So, by done with your vote, what do you do?
You're all set.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate your time.
Does this take care of both sides?
No.
We have an article in the warrant.
I normally run a really tight meeting, but this is not. Yeah, we'll take a motion here.
All right.
Go ahead.
Make a motion to amend the town property lines at One Witten Estates and placement on the special town meeting warrant for November 2021.
Second.
All right, motion on item 7's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Sure.
So this goes to town board and passes. Is there a waiting period to get this thing posted, registered, anything like that?
Yeah, just, I would imagine just staff time to get it recorded. So however long that would
The Attorney
be.
General's approval on this, right now.
So,
As soon as the town meeting voted, we could put it on record.
We could filing with the Registry of Deeds on this side.
that take days or a
Probably
couple
the
weeks?
following day, I would imagine.
It's a matter of days, not weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, days, not weeks after town meeting.
As quickly as possible, if that helps you.
Yeah, we know your transactions tied to this, so we'll go as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Matt, item number 8, knowing that we're short one member, maybe two, I wonder if we should, or if we have the luxury of pushing off the health insurance discussion?
Sure. These are technical amendments, but,
Well, it is a first reading, we can,
yeah, it's just a first reading. Can we at least start the clock? Because this won't be finalized until November 2nd. And it's been sent to the underwriter for our insurance fund to review. You know, basically, we have on page 4, an employee wants to go from full-time to part-time and be able to come back to the town's retiree policy. The individual is eligible for retirement. So it's very similar to the provision above it where we let somebody come back one time. So you can leave our insurance, go to your spouse's coverage, your partner's coverage, but then because you are fully vested in the Worcester Regional Plan, when you become a retiree, you come back to the town's plan. That saves the town some money, and then on page 5, we're adding some language regarding qualifying event. So we're allowing people to opt out of the town's insurance coverage when they have a qualifying event, which would be a marriage, birth of a child, or some other event. So we've encountered both of these things in the experience of running this fund, and we think those are solid recommendations. We can go into more detail in the second and third reading if you'd like.
So these are fairly employee-friendly
Yes.
moves. Good. Okay. First reading, we'll have a couple of extra bites at that apple. Number 9, language for personnel bylaw amendment regarding vacation for our special town meeting.
So I don't have the language prepared yet because I'm still trying to think through the model I'd like to recommend. The problem is this, under the personnel bylaw as it stands now, a brand-new employee gets 0 vacation for their first full year of employment with the town, and they get 1 week in their first year. So they get a week of vacation over 2 years. That's a very difficult to sell to, once again, using the gentleman who was here tonight as an example, but here's a lateral hire. The guy's coming into a $90,000 a year position from a senior position in another community where he may get 2, 3, 4 weeks of vacation. When I say, welcome aboard, you get no vacation. Yeah. So we just not a very good employee-friendly or attractive option. What I'm thinking I'd like to do is allow people to begin to accrue from their date of hire. So we're not giving them carte blanche here. Here's a whole week to start off, but you're letting them accrue so that by the time they're at 6 months or so in the employment of the town, they'd have a few days to cobble together, together with a Friday and a holiday to make a longer vacation. Vacations are an important part of employee morale and keeping people centered. So I just think it'd be enlightened. So I'm not inclined to just immediately charge it up, but rather so that somebody who's new and wants to go away, for instance, the next summer after they've been working for the town, they'd be well along towards having a week or 2 to put together. That's what I'm just going to work on detailed language around that.
10?
Number 10, our special town meeting warrant.
There's actually a lot here.
Yeah.
Get late.
Is there anything critical on that we need to talk to about that? Because there's a lot of blanks in there.
There are still some blanks, but if you don't mind, I want to go over some of the larger items. I think Article 1 largely is self-explanatory. We're adding a little bit of money to town council, which is the attorney. We are setting aside funds for the economic development facilitator. So in the event that the town were to be awarded a large grant, we would need this person to move into a more of a full-time type position in order to administer all the complex moving parts of the grant. If we don't have the money in place in the budget, then we wouldn't have the money to pay the person for the hours. This is an hourly position. So if we don't get the grant, the money will not be spent. If we do get the grant, we'll need the extra help. There's just, the MassWorks grant has a lot of pieces to it. And then there's also, we're pursuing federal funds, EDA infrastructure funds to match. So there's an awful lot of work there. That's why that was added. Community development wages. So we're going back into the personnel line item for the community development department. We've had a couple of temporary people there. Now we're going back to a full-time person. The full-time person will make about $10,000 less than the person who left the position back in February. But some of that's also being absorbed by the part-time employee and a new full-time clerk, principal clerk. So once you add it all up and net it all out, Jean did all the work. She came up, we'll need an adjustment of 37.5 to that line item. Some of that will be contingent on some people's plans, but again, it's better to have enough there for every contingency and then back it out. I think
It works out at the May town meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Where I want to put in some detail is Article 9, which is the municipal center oil spill cleanup and the new tank and pump. We've got a pretty solid estimate of the trailing costs for the cleanup at $150,000. A little bit more is $150 and we are still awaiting estimates for the new tank, day tank, and the pump that will service it. We're
Is
But we'll
the
add
testing
those.
finished? We were concerned that it was coming out good.
So you need a series of clean tests, and we are not there yet. And we also may have to dig one more. That $150,000 includes another monitoring well, so that we have the minimum number required by DEP.
So far.
In terms of new details, that's what I had to add. You can see there's still quite a bit to be filled in. When do you want to close the warrant, Gene?
The Finance Committee would like to have a one-and-done meeting on October 12th, so the warrant would have to be closed by October 5th.
So we have another meeting.
We
You have one more.
have it at the printers by October 21st.
Right, and we, all right, that's good, right? That's,
Yeah.
meets our
Proceeding,
little
this
policy.
is typical pattern for
Yeah.
us. We're filling in, most of there are places where there's numbers to be filled in, we have numbers. They're just not solid enough to present
Yeah.
to you just yet.
Always cognizant that this board presenting this warrant to the town should really go through it thoroughly. And I think we will have that opportunity, maybe with a lighter than usual October agenda. Kevin, if you're listening. All right.
11, can we pass over that until Kevin's?
I think that's important.
Yeah.
I also think we may want a
Meetings.
remote meeting discussion.
We already parsed that out.
Push.
We did that.
We didn't need to finalize that?
No, we voted on it.
Okay. You'll find that votes tend to blur together at some point, and you don't remember what you did the week before.
Over the minutes until Kevin's.
We will pass over the minutes, apologizing to the tree that will produce the second set of those minutes. Matt, your report?
I want to keep it brief because I told legal counsel we'd call them from executive session at about 8:45. So where we stand, we're working on this warrant, trying to track down last cost estimates. Tomorrow, we have a site visit for the emergency backup generator project and electrical upgrade here at Town Hall. We're knocking on wood because it's hard to find people that are willing to work for municipal government, and even on a contract basis, including designers. So I'm hoping we have a couple people show up, that we get some bids. But tomorrow's the site walk. The 27th of September is the due date for the engineering design work for this electrical project here at the Municipal Center. Just in terms of what I really need to put on your radar screen, just so I don't want you to be blindsided, both the state and the Shrewsbury bid group, which we are part of, were out simultaneously for road salt contracts. And last year, we were buying road salt for $46.50 a ton delivered. And this year, we're at, anybody want to guess?
60.
62.
62?
So it's a 30% increase in the cost of road salt. So our snow and ice budget may be under pressure, depending on how the weather goes. Interestingly enough, the state's price was within 11 cents of ours. So we didn't lose or gain by being part of either buying group. That's a pretty substantial increase in 1 year.
30%.
Right.
So the
Like every other commodity.
right, and the last piece of that is until MassDOT publishes its hourly rate for plow operators, we won't announce ours, because we need to be competitive with the DOT rate in order to keep our people and not have other towns scoop them up. So most other communities peg their rate to the DOT. We don't. We kind of let it float a little bit, but we need to be real close to keep our folks. Other than that, there isn't anything I need to update you on that. I can't wait a couple weeks to do.
Anything else, board?
Before we adjourn, we had a number of people, there's nobody that wants to speak to us about it.
Well, let's find out. For those that stayed to the very end, is there anything you'd like to bring to Art Mike?
May I?
Please.
Mike Zwicker, 46 Oak Street. I watched the last meeting, and you're going over adequacy and stuff like that for the boards. And somewhere in there, you bring up about a 2-hour window for meetings. If you don't mind, I have a couple questions on that. Where does that have any play into what goes on for adequacy in a board? And number two is, and if you go out and look at our planning board meeting for Thursday night, it's not happening in 2 hours. The planning board does so much more stuff than what your normal boards do. I understand you say, we'll take a vote at 2 hours to continue or not. Well, let's say the vote went nay or not, and you have people on an agenda. You just can't send them home. It don't work that way. It's a public hearing. So I think it should just be left up to the chair to worry about what goes on the board. Because the minute you put a time restraint on any minute, on any meeting, as you said earlier in that meeting, you want everybody to review everything, go over everything, make sure everything's correct. You're going to eliminate and lose all that. Because everybody's just going to look at a clock and not worry about what's going on in the meeting. As you heard tonight, subdivisions, large projects. Back in the day when we had the wind farm, I think we all, some of us remember, we'd be in this room till 11:30 at night. We're all volunteers on that board and other boards. We didn't ask what the hours are. We're here to serve the town. So to put a restraint, I think, is completely against the thought factor of boards. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, you raise a good point, and I think the idea was we would give the board the discretion. I've been at conferences where they say a meeting should only last 90 minutes. Anything beyond 90 minutes and you lose the crowd. Having said that, I completely understand the idea of a hearing, and I think we probably might want to discuss that when we finalize those.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything Mr. Zwicker said. You just have to take a vote. That's all.
Jurisdiction over the hours that the planning board?
No. It's just to recognize the fact that people after 2 hours may not be functioning at the same level of engagement. If you're all set with it, then just vote to continue. It's not a big deal. But I've personally participated in meetings that go 5-6 hours, and that's typical. And by the time you get to the fifth hour, nobody's paying attention. And if you're the person, you got to flip the conversation around. If you're the last person up, and there's something that's important to you, and everybody's, oh my God, I've been here for 4 hours, just want to get out of here. What do you need? No, let's just move it. And you lose that. Did you get due process? Did you get an open meeting? No, you didn't. So it kind of goes both ways. And the way you balance that is simply say, well, do we all have the energy to continue? Do the people in the audience want to continue? If the answer is yes, just take a vote. Maybe it's more like 3 hours instead of 2. You can amend that, change it. But that was the thought behind it. I can't sit through a 3-hour meeting, especially when these guys are going through really detailed maps and all the rest of it. One of the things that we're trying to do is significantly change the quality of the information that goes into the boards, especially the land use boards, all of them which deal with complicated issues and plans, right? The application has to be complete. We're not asking people to go into the consulting business anymore. You have an application, it's a vehicle. The staff, the professional staff certify that all of the necessary components are there. So you're not picking something up only to put it back down again because it's not complete. The emphasis on the professional staff has to be that they have to anticipate the questions that the board might ask and prepare the applicant and prepare the board with enough background information so that when you're prepping for your meeting, the obvious questions are asked and answered in the material that you're given so that you can be a more efficient operation in total. You're still going to have 3-4 hour meetings. But there has to be some back pressure there to get people to perform against those expectations. Because like I said, if you're the last person on the agenda, the guarantee that you're going to get the same level of attention and engagement as somebody who was early in the meeting is just not true. So it's kind of it's a balance, but you do it with, it's a vote.
So I want to reread that particular piece that we're talking about, but if the meeting goes 2.5-3 hours without a vote, what happens?
I don't think there's any repercussions to it.
No repercussions. just a suggestion, in other communities that I've applied to, is sometimes you can't get on the agenda because it's full.
Well, that's the other part.
That may be a consideration of your board to look at what your caseload, well, if you have a certain amount that you want to take on, then your administrative staff could say, that agenda's full, you can't get on until the next one. I don't know if.
You'll have time limits that you have to comply with. You have to hear things within a certain period of time. But on those nights though, Mike, you would say, all right, so we've got 3 people that are time limited, they have to be heard. So this conversation about meets and bounds, for instance, which is optional for the board, can't be done.
If I might, through the chair, we've tried that. The thing is we have to sign a Mylar when it's done. That warrant can take 20 minutes. You can't leave until the Mylars are all signed. We do stuff that, I mean, obviously you see the meetings, that's so different than any other board. We might get a stack of papers that thick for one night, which is fine. We're all adults. If we can't keep our eyes open, we're going to say, excuse me, I'm going to go home. But we don't. We stay there and we do what we're supposed to do. And I mean, we all think the same, whether it's 7 o'clock or 10 o'clock. It doesn't matter. I could, we're not, how would I say it? And nothing on disrespect, but we're not little kids. If we know how late we can stay up till to do a board meeting. No different than you have guys out plowing your roads at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning with toothpicks holding their eyeballs open. And they're in the public streets. So there's times when we're only having a 1-hour meeting, as things are passed over, we get out. But other things have a specific time on the agenda. And Thursday's night meeting, I think the last one is 8:45. And that's only giving them 15-minute windows on each one. And one project might take 40 minutes to go through. It varies every night. You can't set a guideline. And like I said, the minute you put time on it, you start cutting the process of real thought and real conversation. We have a 7-member board, not 5, not 3, there's 7, plus the public. So it takes longer. Even the last project we just did, the Tri-Town, there were 2-hour meetings, don't get me wrong. But that TV screen had lawyers, engineers, you name it. It was full of bodies. We don't have that at our meetings. We have maybe the new administrator and ourselves and the presenter. Now you want to supply 40 people on a screen to handle everything in a due process, hey, we'll try it for 2 hours. It's not going to happen, and you all know that. So it's just one of those deals. I'm just bringing it up.
What's the authority for us to do this? Is this advisory?
Again, I don't want to go too far down this. It's just a vote. If you want to keep going, keep going. If it's that offensive, take it out, but it's really kind of a simple thing. I think every member of a board deserves that much respect. You are all volunteers. You may have people on these boards that don't want to go past 9 o'clock. They still want to volunteer. I don't know what you do there. I mean, like I said, I've sat in some late meetings on a 7-member town council. I know 5 of them wanted to get out. They were just done. But 2 of them kept us there until freaking, pardon my French, midnight, because they wanted to talk about stuff. The discipline has to come from the chair, and that's the principle that was informing a lot of this code of conduct, was the chair needs to move the meeting along and prevent people from making repetitive arguments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you're not setting a time limit. You're saying, all right, we're cognizant of the fact that we've now been here for 2 hours. It forces everybody to sit back and say, okay, how much of this agenda are we going to be able to get done tonight? I move that we continue until 11 o'clock. Done. Right? I don't really think that that's condescending at all. I think it empowers every member of the board to have a voice in whether or not they think they're being productive, moving on.
Okay. Should that be a consensus of the particular, each?
We might want to pull more of the board members of the different boards to see how they feel about it, because if it doesn't have any support, then just take it out. It's easier to do it that way. But, I mean, there's a lot of valid concerns there, Mike. I'm not poo-pooing them. I think you made a lot of good points. There are things, they're constructively approved if you don't get to them. So clearly, you have to do that business. Yeah. But we want these chairs to make better use of your time. So if there are things on there that are not pressing,
We know that.
they can either set up a special meeting and dispose of that business, or push it off.
We know that I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, don't get me wrong, I'm not speaking for our board, I'm speaking personally. You know, I've been on it 13 years now, I think it's been 13 years or so. And I don't know why all of a sudden this is becoming an issue. I mean, we've done it all these years. I've heard nobody complaining or anything like that. If it's a late night, we pass over the things that are on maybe to-do list, but they stay on that list. Well, some nights we need to stay there and do it so that we can present the bounds to you guys because we have time restraints. I'm throwing it out there. I mean, I watched the whole meeting, and when I heard that, it was like, okay, I'm going to voice my opinion on it. We've been doing it long enough, and to have somebody tell me that in 2 hours you need to take a vote for something I volunteer to do, I think it's kind of crazy, personally.
Fair enough.
Thank you for your time.
We will
Appreciate it.
discuss it a little further, and at this late hour, that's the best I can promise you. Having said that, having nothing else from the board, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of litigation, interest in real property, and then to leave executive session for the purpose of adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Thanks, guys.